He knows that we can't change the world drinking coffee in our socks, but he'll ask you to ponder, encourage you to wander, and buy you a drink on the rocks.
Today we're here with Justine Myers. Welcome.
Thanks, Andy. It's great to be here.
You know, first of all, it's kind of funny how we met. We went to, if you remember, we were at a yoga practice and I was on my mat across the room and I heard you make a comment on how no doctor ever cured me. And my attention was drawn to you right away because I'm a strong believer in people have to be their own advocates when it comes to health, and that really intrigued me. You know, it was after class that you had showed me some before pictures, and I was just blown away at these pictures from where you were standing in front of me right now, the incredible difference. Can you tell me something about the journey that got you there?
Yeah, so I started trying to heal myself in about 2014, so about 7 years ago. At the time, I had been taking antibiotics and birth control and various topical medications for acne, and they had really stopped working. I had been taking them for 5 years, and all of a sudden my skin started breaking out again. And I said, all right, enough. I don't want to be stuck going to the doctor for the rest of my life. This isn't hormonal anymore. I'm an adult. This shouldn't be happening. This is my body saying something's wrong. And so I started researching on the internet and started experimenting with my diet. And from there, it's been a journey of kind of reconnecting with my body and taking responsibility for my health, viewing any symptom as a message from my body that something needs to be changed. There's something in my environment that's not right. And I started out on a journey to fix acne and ended up reversing depression and fatigue, my autoimmune disease, and a whole host of countless symptoms.
What were some of the root causes that you discovered on this journey?
So diet stuff, I'm very sensitive to gluten, and I think many people are. Gluten sensitivity does not just cause digestive issues, so oftentimes it can be a cause for migraines or PMS symptoms, any number of different things. Underneath all of my food sensitivities was heavy metal toxicity. And that really messed up my body's ability to do what it was trying to do and ended up causing food sensitivities. So for me, eliminating the foods that I was sensitive to definitely helped reduce my symptoms, but it was ultimately removing the heavy metals from my body that really cured everything. All of my symptoms came from that.
Now, is that something that the doctors discovered, or is that something that you discovered along the way, along this research journey?
Well, I did see doctors. It came out of a discussion with a doctor a little bit, but ultimately it was really me. And I actually haven't seen a doctor in almost 4 years. I've done 90% of the work on my own and through my own research on the internet. I did follow a protocol that was created by a chemist, so a doctor, but PhD doctor, not medical doctor.
So when you started uncovering the heavy metals, for people out there that don't have a good understanding of it, because we all have some in our bodies,
yes,
what are some general sources that people come into contact with?
Well, what most people know is fish, which can be a source. It's generally less toxic than it's laid out to be. A lot of the sources come from the medical system. So silver fillings, amalgams in your teeth do contain quite a lot of mercury, and mercury is incredibly toxic. So any amount is bad for you, and the fillings will release vapors. So if you've had silver fillings in your mouth, especially if you've had them for 30 years, you've been absorbing this chronic low exposure to mercury for however many decades you've had them in your mouth. You can also inherit them from your mother. So I never had silver fillings, but my mom did. So I inherited some from her in the uterus. A lot of injections, especially in the 90s, had thimerosal, which is a mercury-based preservative. Some of them still do. It used to be in thermometers. It can still be in light bulbs. It can be a preservative in mascara and skin lightening creams. And that's just mercury. And then, there's lead, of course, that can be in the pipes, it can be in the water, it can be in the paint, it can be in old houses, and even in like a mug could have mercury in it, or the paint on a mug or a dish. I mean, it's really, the metals are everywhere, so we've all been exposed.
So it sounds like when you're talking about this, that this can be a slow process, over time, of those things accumulating, in your body. So for someone that may not say, well, I'm not sick.
Yeah, that's a great point. So a couple of thoughts on that. I think toxicity is like a bucket, and we all have a different size of bucket. Some people have smaller buckets, other people have larger buckets, and when your bucket completely fills, that's when a health crisis can come. So that can be an autoimmune diagnosis, that can be your body really shutting down. Prior to that point, symptoms might start creeping in. You might start getting more headaches or skin issues. Maybe you start getting a little bit of eczema or more PMS symptoms. Any really physical symptom, in my experience, is connected to toxicity. Historically, heavy metal toxicity has been understood to be a result of people who work in an industry where they're exposed to large amounts of heavy metals. So in the conventional system, most doctors won't consider heavy metal toxicity unless someone has worked in a field where they were exposed in a factory, maybe to mercury, without realizing that the vast majority of the population has been exposed to small amounts chronically over long periods of time, and our bodies really don't have a way to get rid of them. So it just builds and builds and builds, and it builds through generations too. Like I said, we inherit from our mothers, so each generation gets more and more unless you actively remove it from your body.
You have a wealth of information out there. One of the things that struck me was, that as you go along in life, that people identify themselves by their illness. People tend to lead with that when they bring up something.
Yes, I think we've normalized illness and symptoms, and now it's something we don't necessarily pay attention to unless we're clued into it. So I use the example of hearing your name. Whenever someone says Andy, you immediately cue in and listen. I'm cued in to listen to symptoms. When I hear someone mention, oh, I just have headaches, or I have depression and it's genetic, or I have this or this issue, I notice that right away. And I found that I very rarely meet someone where I don't hear some sort of health issue that comes up within the first couple times of meeting them. And we've normalized it. We think that it's normal, or we think that it's genetic. And yes, there is a genetic propensity. Your genes, you have some blueprint laid out, and if everything goes wrong, you may develop celiac disease, or you may develop autoimmune hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis, cancer, whatever. But what triggers that is environmental toxicity or high levels of stress, whatever that can be from the toxicity or from a stressful lifestyle, what food you're eating, any of those number of things. So that is called epigenetics, the way that our genes actually fire. And chronic illness is an epidemic right now. The numbers are it's skyrocketing. For autoimmune disease, for type 1 diabetes, a lot of these things we say are genetic, but there's no such thing as a genetic epidemic. It's coming, it's exploding. So there's something in our environment that's causing it. And I don't think that as a society, we're really paying attention to that. We're not making that connection.
You obviously gained the confidence to listen to your body. How did you get to that point to where it's such a knowing inside you?
It was a process, and I think it's like building a muscle, learning to rebuild that connection. I think we lose it as children. It's really kind of drilled out of us. If you're a picky eater, maybe you're not eating a food because it's giving you a headache or a stomach ache, but we're still told finish everything on your plate. We're fed junk food. It's just taken out of us. And so we have to rebuild that connection. And so I think in a way I was fortunate because I struggled with acne, and I was able to say, okay, well, this food causes me to break out and this food doesn't. And I had a very physical sign literally on my face saying gluten does not work. it wasn't internal. Most people don't go around saying, well, let me just tell you about my digestive system. So it was very obvious to me. And from there, I started to make more connections. I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. The same food that causes me to break out also seems to flare my tendonitis and cause a headache, or, it makes me more irritable, makes me really fatigued. But without the physical, okay, I have a pimple now, it would have been harder for me to make that connection. Especially this was 7-8 years ago, when this discussion was much less common than it is now. There's much more awareness around it now, I think, than there was when I started.
One of the things that I had thought about is, like, how do people start this journey when things are wrong with themselves and they're not getting answers and they're constantly being treated for the symptoms they have? What information are you building up through your organization to help people?
I want to bring awareness around the fact that symptoms are a message from our body. So the conventional system is, when you have a symptom, you take a pharmaceutical that basically puts this message from your body on mute. So it's like you have a hot stove in front of you, you put your hand on the stove, you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh, let me give you some pain medication, but go ahead and just keep your hand there, that's fine. So it's very much a switch in mindset to thinking, okay, this is, my body's telling me I have pain for a reason. It's telling me, take your hand off the stove. Finding where the stove is, what actually is the root cause, can take a lot of experimenting and trial and error and a lot of personal responsibility. But once you find it, life gets a lot better.
I think that's a great analogy. I mean, people do have to be, their own advocates. And you're right. In the system that we grow up in, conventionally, we're just told, well, you having something wrong, a symptom, you go to the doctor and they tell you that way, and your
body is flawed.
And you blindly accept it.
And I think that is so, so tragic, to think that your body is inherently flawed. And when I was first starting to think about all of this stuff, I remember I kept thinking, why does my body hate me? Why does my body hate me? And I was horribly depressed. And that is such a devastating thing for me to think about now, because my perspective now is, my body was telling me, Justine, wake up. You need to change some things. This is going to get worse, because if you don't fix the root cause, whatever symptoms you have are going to get worse and worse and worse, and radiate out until you have a major health crisis. That could take 1 year, that could take 30 years. But it's a message to wake up and do something about it. And thinking that, oh, my body just hates me, or my body is flawed, is so devastating, because our bodies are doing the very best that they can to keep us healthy. Our body wants to be healthy. It wants to serve us, but we've put it in a position where it can't do that.
What was your support like? Did you have a good support system? Because some people that look at this stuff are just, they're at their wits' end. They've been dealing with something chronic for years, and it could be buried under layers of stuff. And they may feel like they're all alone, that the medical community wants them to do one thing, their parents want them to do something else.
I was lucky in that I have a very supportive family. I have incredibly supportive, wonderful parents. This was not their way of thinking. It was entirely my own drive to figure this out, but they supported me in that. It probably scared them that I really did not want to see doctors. But we're out on the other side, and they have adopted a lot of 90% of what I've done. They're also doing, because they've seen the dramatic changes in me. It can be a very, very lonely and isolating road, especially as you go through these changes, you start to see everything around you differently, and you start to see the illness in people all around you, and you see sick people, and you can't tell them, oh, you're sick. Oh, you have headaches? Let me tell you how to fix them. You can't really do that. So all these thoughts just run in your head, and you just kind of try to figure out ways to just slip something in that maybe someone will pick up on what you're trying to say. But it can be very lonely. And when you're really sick, if you're really, really sick and really struggling, went through some ups and downs in my healing and had some further poisoning that happened after I started my awakening. And I ended up pretty much bedridden, about 18 hours a day in bed. I had these chronic headaches and back pain. My whole body was shutting down. I had panic attacks. And that was really isolating because, and I'm sure if you know someone who's been in that position, when you're constantly asked, oh, how are you doing? And you don't want to say, well, I feel horrible. I'm barely functioning. I'm barely alive, but I'm standing here right now, I guess. So it can be lonely, but finding a community of people who are dealing with chronic health issues in a way that's not just accepting the system, I'm just going to take this medication and whine about how I feel. Finding people who are also actively trying to change their situation and heal is so incredibly helpful.
No, I'm sure that is, because you're right. I'm sure for some people it can be just an absolute lonely journey, especially if they're not blessed with the same support, that you have. Can you recommend any communities or, that people can look into?
Well, I have an Instagram. It's called Finding Radiant Health, and I post a lot on there and have a great community of people. I've met some amazing other people who are healing. So we've got that going. The paleo, the autoimmune protocol community, there's a lot of people using dietary stuff. So the internet is such a wonderful resource. I know technology has its issues, but it also has the amazing ability to connect us with people all around the world who we wouldn't otherwise be able to connect with. So even if there's not someone in your immediate geographic area, we're on the internet. We're out there. There's lots of people asking these questions and trying to heal.
Now, do you do individual coaching too?
I do, yes. I do individual coaching. I help some people who are already on their own health journey and really just need some emotional support and someone to listen and who understands. And I have other people who are coming to me because they have no idea where to start, because it can be really confusing and they need direction. And I can help provide that as well as the emotional support.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, I'm a firm believer, whether you're trying to manifest perfect health or whatever you're trying to create in your life, that the people that are against that, or the people that are not on your team, you stop involving those people, and you stop sharing it with those, and you find the people that are going to support that, and the rest of the people you just...
Exactly, yeah. When I started paleo in 2014, at the time, no one really knew what it was, and I was not overweight, but if I told people I was eating a specific diet, they would look at me and go, but you don't need to lose weight, and they would have this immediate negative reaction, and I think it came out of a place of like, well, if she thinks she needs to lose weight, then maybe I need to lose weight,
exactly.
But it wasn't about weight, it was about health.
Right. Immediately they're probably forcing them to look in their own mirror and say, well, look at her. She's in great shape. Maybe I need to do something.
Which, I mean, I think, being overweight can be a sign of health issues, and metabolism can be severely affected by health issues. So if you are struggling to lose weight, it might be a sign of maybe it's not necessarily what you're eating. Maybe it's a toxicity issue. Maybe there's something else going on. Not a whole other topic. But yeah, I do believe if someone is trying to hold you back, then usually it's about them. It's not about you. And if you're trying to heal, you need all the help you can get, and holding on to an anchor is not going to help you.
That's a good way of putting it. And sometimes you gotta cut people out of your life, people that no longer serve, you just have to, let them go and focus on attracting the people that are going to support you along your journey.
Yeah, it's a long and it's a difficult journey, and these root causes and the way our body responds to them can be different for different people. So there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It takes a lot of trial and error, and it's not easy, and it takes work, and it takes personal accountability. But if you can put in that time, you can have a lifetime of health. And it's pretty amazing because I feel like I'm flying all the time now. I just see sick people all around me. I'm just floating above them, which is pretty depressing in a way. But
for the ones that you can reach and, give help to, I mean, that's, and you can, you will. It's all about empowering people, but it's about helping them discover the answers within. And so there's got to be a lot of satisfaction yourself if you can, put that information out there and help coach people, to help them on their journey.
Yes, I know how good it feels to heal, and I absolutely love seeing other people get to experience that and experience the connection between, well, if I take this action, I feel worse. If I take this action, I feel better. And things aren't a coincidence. It's not just bad luck. It's not just bad genes. It's something that I can do. And that's so cool. And it's so empowering when you realize that you have control.
I've read some of your Instagram, and I know that, a long time ago, you were not a self-confident person and, self-empowered person. But it just seems to be like exploding out of you now, So
yeah, not at all.
So was it little steps along the way that, you gained a little more confidence and you're like, now want to go out and tell the world how great it is to be in perfect or optimal health?
Yes, I think it's a combination of a few things. It's incredibly empowering to accomplish this, something that the world says it's impossible to reverse autoimmune disease. The world says it's impossible to get rid of these symptoms. And then when you do it, it's like, okay, well, if I can do that, I can do anything. And also, the heavy metals in my brain really affected my thinking. I was depressed my entire life. I didn't know it until I got the heavy metals out of my brain and started feeling happy. And then went, oh, this is what happy feels like. Okay, that's new. This is what it feels like to walk into a room and not feel like I don't belong. I had constant imposter syndrome, constant low self-confidence. And as a musician, that's incredibly debilitating.
I'm sure it is, especially at your level.
So the heavy metals they really, really controlled my thoughts, and getting them out, I've learned who I am and who I wasn't. I thought I was this unhappy person, and I was not. It was just the mercury in my brain. We have a saying in the chelation, which is the heavy metal detox. We have it's not you, it's the mercury, and it's so true.
Depending on your age and how many environmental factors you've gone through, stuff could be buried under layers, and it's like overwhelming. Where do you start? Because, you're bombarded every day by, well, this causes this, or you need to have low fat diet, or you need to have this, or you need to be vegan, or whatever it is. We're bombarded by this marketing thing. The beautiful thing about the internet is you have access to everything in the world. But the downfall to it is there's a lot of information pulling people in different directions. So where do you start?
It's definitely hard to sift through. I think building this connection with your body, and this is the first step, so that you can start to read what it's telling you, because most people can't do that. Most people can't make a connection between a cause and a symptom. And so starting with food, I think, is a really great place, because you start to learn to read what your body's telling you. So I started with Paleo Diet, which I think is fantastic. Gluten is a really common trigger. Refined sugar is a really common trigger. Dairy, especially conventional dairy. Some people are okay with dairy, some people aren't. So eliminating those foods and seeing if you notice any changes is a really good place to start. The refined oils, vegetable oils like canola oil, vegetable oil, those are really highly toxic as well. And they're in most packaged food. So really starting to eat real foods, eating fruits and vegetables, eating grass-fed meat, ideally, if you can find access to it, eating locally as much as possible, and really strictly eliminating certain foods for a period of time can help you start to make those connections. And then from there, you have more of a basis to build on.
And what I found too is that, you ask someone if they eat well, and the general answer is, unless they think back to their last meal of, eating through a drive-through of fast food, they're like, I eat pretty well. Did you keep a food journal, or do you recommend that people take a week's snapshot of what they eat and write everything down to try to figure out?
I think that can be very helpful. I actually did not do that. I'm not so great on the journaling. But I also had a lot of self-control. I had a lot of motivation to really heal quickly. So I was able to say, okay, paleo, all right, I'll do it. And I cut everything out that wasn't paleo right from the start. And if you're going to do that, I think it's easier to do it without a journal. However, if that sounds like way too much and you want to say, okay, well, I'm going to start with just eating gluten-free for a while, then I think the food diary can be very helpful, because even if you're eating gluten-free, you might still be eating other triggers. Triggers can affect you for longer than you might think. So often, like when I first started eliminating foods, I noticed that if I ate gluten, my skin would break out 3 to 5 days later. So it's not always an immediate reaction. A few years later, I connected, okay, if I get glutened, which is accidentally having some gluten, because I wasn't going out and eating bread, but if I did accidentally get some in my food at a restaurant, or, if you have a soup that has flour in the broth and you don't know it, that kind of thing, I would start getting irritable right away. Within an hour or two, I'd start getting angry, and just everyone around me was just annoying me. And then I would get narcoleptic. I remember I fell asleep during an orchestra rehearsal. And then my skin would break out like 3 to 5 days later. So I didn't know all of that when I first started. It was through the process of learning and making those connections. And then I know if I start getting really irritable, there's something going on, that it's usually not just, oh, I'm having a grumpy day. I'm having a grumpy day because something caused it.
Now, what about stress? Do you have anything that you've built into like your daily routines? Because, obviously that could be a whole nother subject to talk about, what stress does to people's bodies. But is there things that you've incorporated, over this journey that have helped you?
Stress is a huge trigger, and I think, obviously we know it wreaks havoc on the body, but it also breaks that connection to our body, because when we're stressed, we stop listening to what it's saying. We get tight, we get tense, we start focusing on the negative, and we stop connecting with our own body. So I think taking time to do the things that you enjoy are really important. So I love yoga. I love being in nature and hiking. Even if all I have time for is a 10-minute walk around the neighborhood, that's better than nothing. Getting enough sleep is so important. Don't sacrifice sleep. Whatever you do, don't sacrifice your sleep. Yeah,
and I can understand that one, being a UPS so many years, sacrificing my sleep.
Yeah. So. If you're open to trying yoga, it can be really helpful, even away from your mat, just having the ability to come back to your breath and focus on your breath if you're in a stressful situation. I know, Andy, you told me that when you liked to meditate while driving at work. I did that for years driving into work. I would, do the meditation and just focus on that, and it's amazing. You take a few minutes a day and you do something like that, and it enables you to just go in with a clearer mind. Definitely.
I think we're so ingrained to multitasking our lives away that
I don't like multitasking. I like being focused.
Yeah, and that's another conditioning thing I think that you get from society. Well, the more that you can multitask, the more that you get done, and it's backwards.
Yeah. In general, the more the better is very rarely true.
Exactly.
Even like for exercise, if your body is stressed, then a lot of exercise is not necessarily a good thing. Maybe the most helpful thing is to go for a short walk, or maybe if you're really sick, like I was for a period of time, all I could do was stand outside. But that was better than nothing. Even if I just stood on my driveway to get some sunlight and to breathe some fresh air. Now, if you're in a more healthy place, then more exercise can be good, but you always want to listen to your body, and you want to do something that you enjoy. So if you hate running, don't go running. Right. Do what you like.
Well, that brings up another point with, we mentioned the word diet, and we mentioned a couple of things, but really your health is a lifestyle. And so I think that was so key that you said, doing something and finding things that you enjoy.
Yes, and it's being healthy is what you do every single day. It's not a 14-day cleanse. It's not, I'm going to do a juice fast for a few days. It's what you do day in and day out. And you if you go through a period of eliminating things to find what your triggers are, then you can have some balance and you can say, okay, I know what's a hard no. I know what is maybe not the best, but I can get away with every once in a while as a treat. And I know what really works for me. And once you have that, you have the freedom to feel really good and still enjoy life.
And that in itself is so empowering.
Yeah.
Just that knowledge.
Exactly.
So what do you say to the people that say, we're talking about all these activities like yoga and being outside hiking and all the time that it takes to do this stuff. What do you say to the person that's just, well, I don't have time?
Prioritize your priorities. What's really important to you? Most of us we waste a lot of time during our days. And so figure out what's most important to you and make that happen. And like I said, more is not always better. So what can you reduce or eliminate that's causing you harm? If you are sick, you can't be very productive. You cannot work if you're only at 50%. You can't be your best. So it's an investment in your health, short-term and long-term. What do you want to be like? So I really think about health span a lot, which is not, I don't want to live to be 180. I want to die when I die, but I want to be healthy when I die. I don't want to be mentally and physically deteriorating. And I don't believe that getting older means that we have to become physically decrepit.
No, that's yeah.
I mean, of course something happens as you get older, but it doesn't have to be extreme.
And it's a lot of it to me is a mindset. If you believe that certain things happen as you age, then they probably are going to happen as you age. If you believe that you get younger with each passing day, or you're only as old as you believe, then those people tend to stay younger and tend to be healthier and all of that.
Yeah, I feel better now than I did at 20. I'm almost 30. I'll turn 30 this year. But what's funny is if you look at the pictures from maybe 5 years ago before I had really healed, I look about 10 years older then than I do now.
And that's crazy. That's all in your health.
It's all in the root cause and environmental stuff. So take a look at what you're putting in your body, both what you're eating and drinking, as well as what's your lotion, what's in your shampoo, what's in your deodorant. It can be overwhelming to think of it all at once. So start with one thing at a time. The next time your deodorant runs out, switch to a safer version. You don't have to clean out your whole cupboard at once. If you want to, go for it. Right. But I didn't do that. I switched over time. When you see someone who's really far along in the journey, it can be hard to compare yourself to that. But we all started from zero.
Absolutely.
We all started somewhere.
It's good environmentally, too. If you just take everything you bought and just throw it in the garbage, okay, well, that doesn't really help either. So, and you're right, and phasing in, and because it does take some research to find products that are locally made that, have the right ingredients for your body in them. There's some research, because those aren't necessarily the ones that are dumping in thousands of dollars to their advertising budget to be in your face all the time.
Yeah, so greenwashing is a big thing now because a lot of companies have realized that we want products that are both better for the environment and better for us. And so a lot of companies, rather than actually making a safer product, are just marketing them as safer.
Right, exactly. Putting a little evergreen tree on the front of their lotion or whatever, but there's still the same ingredients in it.
Yes, yeah. If you're on Instagram, I have a lot of resources on my page for finding safer versions of things and what I use and what to look for if you don't want to use what I use.
What I've learned from my own journey is, I feel the body is made to heal itself. If you could tell former you something, what would you tell former you?
Healing is possible. If you think something's wrong, it's not in your head. It is wrong, and healing is possible, but it does take work.
Thank you so much for watching us on Inspired Path. If you've got an inspiring story or know somebody that's inspiring, hit us up in the comments below. And of course, give us a thumbs up if you like what you heard, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. Thank you.